The conflict in Ukraine has taken an unprecedented spatial shift, extending the battlefield thousands of kilometers east, deep into the strategic hinterlands of the Russian Federation. For the first time, Kiev's forces have successfully executed a drone strike against critical offshore energy infrastructure in the Northern Caspian. This extraordinary escalation, a strike deep inside the internationally recognized maritime boundaries of Russia, has shattered the strategic security Moscow previously enjoyed in the Caspian basin, raising immediate questions about the true operational reach of Ukrainian weaponry and the vulnerability of global energy supply lines. The incident occurred early on the morning of December 19th, local time. The Russian Ministry of Defense confirmed the drone strike, identifying the target as the Vityaz Production Rig. This platform, operated by the Russian state energy giant Gazprom Neft, is located approximately 450 kilometers southeast of the Russian city of Astrakhan, placing the operation well beyond previous known operational limits of Ukrainian long-range systems. The significance of the location cannot be overstated. The Caspian Sea has historically been considered a secure strategic buffer zone for Russia, shielding military and economic assets from direct conflict exposure. This strike directly challenges that perception, demonstrating a remarkable achievement in precision, long-range capability for Ukraine. Following the incident, the operator, Gazprom Neft, confirmed that all oil and gas extraction operations on the Vityaz platform and its adjacent connected infrastructure have been immediately and indefinitely suspended. The stated reason for the shutdown was the need for extensive structural integrity checks and security protocol implementation, suggesting damage assessments are ongoing and the platform will remain offline for the foreseeable future. These claims of damage are supported by independent satellite imagery reviewed by commercial OSINT entities. The analysis corroborates structural damage localized specifically to the platform's main transfer station, a vital junction for moving extracted material, and visible damage to the perimeter of the helipad, often used for rapid personnel and equipment transport. In response to the attack and the resulting damage, the Russian Ministry of Transport swiftly issued a temporary, mandatory maritime exclusion zone extending 10 nautical miles around the Vityaz platform, restricting all non-essential vessel traffic and signaling the high security priority of the immediate operational area. Critically, Kiev officially claimed responsibility for the strike. A statement released by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine late on December 19th asserted the attack was a legitimate military action against infrastructure being repurposed for intelligence gathering. The immediate financial market reaction underscored the strategic importance of the target. Following confirmation of the strike on strategic deep strike infrastructure, global crude oil futures, specifically Brent and West Texas intermediate benchmarks, showed a measurable, though marginal, spike of approximately 0.8% in early trading on December 20th. While not a catastrophic rise, the movement signals market anxiety over the successful targeting of energy assets far removed from traditional conflict zones. However, the specifics surrounding the strike, particularly the weapon system employed and the true purpose of the Vityaz rig, are heavily disputed, forming the core of the propaganda and attribution battle between Moscow and Kiev. Kiev has asserted the attack was conducted using a newly developed proprietary long-range unmanned combat aerial vehicle. They claim this indigenous platform, which they are rapidly fielding, demonstrates a minimum operational range capability extending beyond 1,800 kilometers. If verified, this capability represents a profound shift in Ukraine's ability to project power and hold previously secure Russian assets at risk. It would demonstrate not just tenacity, but a genuine breakthrough in domestic military technology, achieved under conditions of intense warfare. Moscow, conversely, has vehemently disputed the notion of Ukrainian indigenous capability for a strike of this complexity and distance. Russian officials allege that the drone used was an altered or heavily modified Western-supplied platform, insisting that Ukraine remains reliant on international partners for the sophisticated components necessary for such a long-range precision attack. This counterclaim is fundamental to the Russian narrative, seeking to minimize the perception of Ukrainian strategic innovation while simultaneously reinforcing the narrative that the West is providing the tools for escalation. The dispute over the target's justification is equally intense. The Security Service of Ukraine, the SBU, claims that the Vityaz platform was not solely an energy production facility. They assert it was being actively used by the Russian Black Sea Fleet for critical intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance missions, potentially housing signals intelligence equipment vital for monitoring regional maritime and air traffic. If true, this classification would transform the target from civilian infrastructure to a legitimate, high-value military objective under international law. Russia's Deputy Minister of Energy has vehemently denied this military use claim. Moscow characterized the attack as an act of blatant economic terrorism, arguing that the sole purpose was to destabilize global energy markets and inflict damage on the Russian economy through illicit means. This narrative is crucial for Moscow, as painting the attack purely as economic terrorism helps frame Ukraine as a rogue actor in the eyes of international consumers sensitive to rising fuel costs. Regarding the human cost, the Russian Ministry of Defense reported 3 non-critical injuries among contracted maintenance personnel evacuated from the rig following the impact. It is important to note that these casualty figures have not been independently confirmed by any third-party medical or diplomatic sources. Ukraine has not addressed the question of casualty numbers in its public statements regarding the operation. Furthermore, environmental concerns remain high, despite official assurances from Russia. The Russian Emergency Situations Ministry claimed the damage was contained and reported no significant oil spill or visible environmental contamination resulting from the strike. This assessment, however, is difficult to verify without dedicated, independent overflights and marine inspections. Independent environmental watchdog groups have already expressed significant concern that such a rapid, definitive claim of no significant spillage is dangerously premature, given the complexity of deep-sea oil infrastructure damage. The strike on the Vityaz rig represents a significant inflection point in the operational map of the conflict. Until now, the deep strikes executed by Kiev have primarily targeted military installations, logistics hubs, or manufacturing centers within the internationally recognized territory of Russia, generally focusing on areas connected to the war effort, such as air bases near Moscow or logistics nodes near the Black Sea. The Caspian Sea target, however, takes the war to a fundamentally new level of strategic depth and risk. The Caspian Basin is central to Russia's geopolitical identity and its energy export strategy, connecting it to Central Asian partners in Iran. The ability to project force effectively into this region demonstrates that almost no asset within the European territory of Russia can now be considered truly safe from Ukrainian reach. This success underscores Ukraine's relentless focus on neutralizing Russian strategic advantage through asymmetric means. Since the full-scale invasion, Kiev has consistently focused resources on developing and deploying long-range unmanned systems, aerial, surface, and subsurface, to counter Russia's overwhelming superiority in conventional firepower and air defense coverage. The repeated successful targeting of the Black Sea Fleet, pushing Russian naval assets far from the Ukrainian coast, paved the way for this new extended-range targeting methodology. The Caspian strike effectively opens a new operational front, purely defined by distance and technological capability, rather than geography relative to the existing front lines. We must consider the immediate implications for Russia's defense planning. Moscow's defense establishment must now fundamentally reevaluate the risk profile of critical national infrastructure, including oil and gas facilities, command centers, and strategic storage depots located thousands of kilometers from the existing front. This forced dispersal of defense assets places additional strain on Russia's already stretched air defense resources, demanding that air defense batteries previously focused on protecting Moscow or the Black Sea now be repositioned eastward to safeguard these newly exposed energy hubs. Furthermore, the technology claimed by Ukraine, a drone capable of 1,800 kilometers, places several critical industrial and military complexes within range, including areas in the Volga Federal District and key portions of Russia's southern military district that have been untouched by the fighting. This capability significantly complicates Russia's strategic calculus and potentially slows down the flow of resources vital to the war effort, even if the primary target is energy-related. The specific targeting of the Vityaz platform, even if the primary function was economic, serves a powerful psychological objective. It is a direct statement to Russian citizens and the global commodity markets that the conflict is no longer contained. It introduces an element of unpredictability regarding the security of supply, particularly affecting Russia's ability to reliably deliver energy exports that fund its military operation. The marginal rise in oil prices, though small, represents the market pricing and the risk of future, more impactful strikes. If Ukraine demonstrates the ability to repeatedly strike such distant, high-value assets, the risk premium demanded by the market will inevitably rise, directly undercutting Russia's energy revenues. The dual-use claim, asserting the rig was an ICER platform, is central to the legitimacy of the attack. Military analysts suggest that deep-sea rigs, given their stable footprint, existing power generation, and communications infrastructure, are highly suitable for signals intelligence operations, especially when deployed in areas of sensitive transit or near strategic waterways. Should the SBU claim be substantiated or even broadly believed by international observers, it bolsters Kiev's argument that the strike adhered to the principles of targeting military-linked infrastructure, counteracting the Russian narrative of pure economic terrorism. The question of attribution regarding the weapon system itself, whether indigenous or modified Western tech, is paramount. If Ukraine has truly achieved the capacity to mass-produce a Yukov with a range nearing 2,000 kilometers, it fundamentally alters the long-term balance of power in the region, establishing Ukraine as a credible technological threat independent of ongoing Western military aid packages. This capability would represent a massive domestic industrial achievement under wartime conditions. Conversely, if Russia's claims of modified Western technology are accurate, it forces a difficult conversation among NATO allies regarding end-use monitoring and the parameters of support, particularly given the distance the platform traveled and the sensitivity of the target location. Looking forward, this strike initiates several crucial geopolitical challenges and a new watch list for observers. First, the immediate focus is on Russian retaliation and escalation. Moscow views the targeting of deep strike economic infrastructure as crossing a significant red line. While Russia has consistently attacked Ukraine's energy infrastructure throughout the conflict, the Caspian strike could potentially provoke intensified and perhaps even more deliberate strikes against vital Ukrainian economic targets far from the front, or against command and control centers. And as a direct reciprocal measure, the ongoing winter campaign against Ukraine's power grid is likely to see renewed severity in the coming weeks. Second, there is the technological verification and industrial. The global defense sector will be keenly observing any verifiable details about the drone used. The ability to launch a precision strike over 1,800 kilometers is not trivial. If the newly developed status is accurate, it signifies that Ukraine has rapidly closed critical technological gaps, prompting Western nations to potentially invest more heavily in similar long-range, high-endurance drone capabilities for their own defense architecture. Third, the impact on neighboring Caspian nations must be considered. Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Turkmenistan, and Iran share the Caspian Sea with the designation of the basin as a newly accessible war zone threatens the stability of their shared maritime resources, trade routes, and their own offshore energy investments. These nations, which have largely sought neutrality in the conflict, will now face increased security concerns and potential pressure to clarify their stance on maritime security protocols in the newly contested waters. Fourth, the insurance and shipping sectors will react. The maritime exclusion zone is localized, but the strike fundamentally changes the risk assessment, for all Russian-affiliated oil and gas operations and shipping routes within the Caspian. We are likely to see upward pressure on insurance premiums for any cargo or assets operating in the basin, adding a further layer of economic friction to Russian exports. Finally, the Vityaz strike contributes to the ongoing redefinition of military targets. As modern warfare increasingly relies on dual-use infrastructure, where energy platforms can function as communications relays or commercial ports as naval logistics hubs, the boundary between legitimate military target and protected civilian asset becomes increasingly blurred. This incident provides a stark case study that will be cited by military legal experts and political leaders alike as the conflict evolves into a deep strike infrastructure war. In conclusion, the successful Ukrainian drone strike on the Vityaz oil rig in the Northern Caspian Sea marks a critical escalation point in the conflict. It verifies Ukraine's impressive, extended technological reach, shatters Russia's sense of strategic security in its eastern hinterlands, and introduces a new element of systemic risk into global energy markets. While the material damage is contained, the geopolitical and psychological consequences are just beginning to unfold, signaling that the battlefield, defined by the reach of unmanned systems, continues to expand at an exponential pace. All eyes now turn to Moscow's next move and the ability of independent entities to verify the technical claims surrounding the weapon system that achieved this unprecedented operational depth. We continue to monitor the Maritime exclusion zone and the ongoing environmental assessment reports from the region.